Let's move on to our topic. Our topic is mindfulness and dementia. I'll just say that my mom and I, we attended an Iona Zoom event together on dementia a couple weeks ago or a month ago. And as always happens with me anyway, when I get some new information, I start talking to everybody about it. And what I noticed is that a lot of people really fear dementia. I'm not myself, I'm not one of those, but it really resonates with me on some level anyway. And I think it does, actually, I can be honest, but it's not the forefront of the things that worry me about illness. And illness, Alzheimer's and dementia, those kinds of things are on the rise for different reasons, right? We learned about this in our workshop, and one of the big ones is inactivity. Couch potato is kind of a modern problem. And also just our longevity, just growing older, it turns out, is actually quite a dangerous thing. So, knowing this about people and the idea of dementia, and also knowing the deep wisdom that exists in the Buddhist teachings, I wanted to search out and see if I could find some Buddhist perspectives on dementia. Turns out, nothing at all in the suttas about it. But I found different stories from meditation teachers, and I collected them together, and I just want to share them with you today because they're very edifying about dementia and then just about our realities in general. Illness was one of the heavenly messengers, meaning the heavenly messengers were these realities that became clear to the Buddha that led to his awakening. The heavenly messengers are sickness, aging, and death. And it's said that when the Buddha awakened under the Bodhi tree, he had transcended sickness, aging, and death. He had cut through his suffering entirely, and seeing the nature of reality, he understood that these things would never be a problem for him again. And he did fall ill. Sometimes there are accounts of this. He did grow old. I believe he grew to be 80 or 82 back 2,500 years ago. That's quite an accomplishment. He did die. He moved on to parinibbana. And none of it was a problem for him. So dementia is obviously a form of illness. It's a memory illness. And so it's a heavenly messenger. It falls into that bucket. And therefore, it's a wake-up call. It's this invitation to wake up and walk the path to the alleviation of suffering. And if you're going all the way, so to speak, it's towards complete freedom from suffering. So some of you may remember a story I mentioned about a meditation teacher who had dementia. And I looked around high and low for it, and I found it. There's a man who taught at the Cambridge Insight Meditation Center up in Massachusetts. And because his partner was very supportive and his Sangha was very supportive, they encouraged him to continue his teaching after he received his diagnosis, so to speak. And according to these people who were traveling with him, he would be in front of a room with 100 people, students, and he would just forget what he was going to say. Sometimes he forgot where he was. This is the nature of the disease. And obviously this caused him a lot of anxiety. But with the encouragement of his friends and with his practice, because he was a long-term practitioner, he'd been doing this for some years, he began to observe his anxiety and fear without rather than trying not to identify with it. So what that would look like is, so when he lost track, he would stop, he'd put his hand on his heart, and he would sense into his physical experience, what's going on right here. And he would name it aloud to himself and to the group that he was with. Confusion, fear, frustration, like that. And by doing that, he moved from a place of fear, bringing it out into the light, and he moved into this place of compassion, allowing it, naming it. And as he, sat with it, he would calm down and eventually resume his place and continue. By doing this practice, he basically, he lessened his suffering. So the teacher who shared this account, her name is Narayan Helen Liebenson. She's also a founding teacher up at this center in Cambridge. She says there are two necessary components to this situation, and the situation is really aging, sickness, and death. Two components necessary: mental development and noble friendship. Mental development and noble friendship. And what is noble friendship? It's sangha. It's contact with fellow practitioners and other insightful or wise beings, especially as our bodies and our minds weaken. It's contact with wise beings. Liebenson writes, "In old age, we see how interdependent we are as we become dependent on those around us. One aspect of our practice is to allow others to help. In cultivating wise friendships with those we trust, we're more likely to be in good hands when things break down. Those friends can be a refuge and remind us of who we really are. Those people who see the goodness in us." I'll talk a little bit more about that because it's beyond the goodness in us. But mental development is mindfulness and meditation. This practice. When we do this practice, it's possible to experience life from a deeper understanding, and doing that before the breakdown, before death. There's a great Hindu master by the name of Nisargadatta Maharaj. He observed himself becoming senile, and he was not overly concerned with it because he knew so clearly that his essence was neither his body nor his mind. He understood that the soul transcends body and mind. The soul transcends body and mind. We're not masters, but you don't need to be a master. You can feel this truth right now when you stop and you come into mindfulness of the present moment. You come back and you inhabit this moment right here with your 5 senses and with your mind. And things come alive around you and inside of you. The colors, the sounds, sensations. You can feel everything becomes more vibrant, all because your attention is invested there. And it's a feeling of richness. And it connects you, this practice, that connects you to the source of your life. You can get a sense that the source of this life is beyond you. It's beyond your mind, it's beyond your body. Buddhist teacher Judith Leaf, she shares a teaching from the Tibetan master by the name of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. When he was in his 70s, he spoke of aging. He said, as you get older, you go to extremes. Fundamentally, you have two choices: an extremely vast mind or an extremely petty mind. There's less and less room in the middle, so you have to make a choice. You can go one way or the other. Apparently, his own choice was obvious to people who saw him sharing reports of his radiating vastness of mind. Zen teacher Blanche Hartman says, I'm grateful I haven't personally had the experience of dementia, but this is an inspiration for me to practice diligently now while I can. And she shared a story of one of her students who told her she'd been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and wanted to continue her Zen study together. So Hartman suggested they sit together and sew. There's these things, it's called a rakusu. It's like a little yoke that lay practitioners in the Soto Zen tradition stitch once they've taken the 16 precepts. I've heard of it. And this woman's sister brings her to the Zen center regularly, and they sew together. And what Hartman notices is that her student's intention is sincere in the midst of her confusion. And her disposition radiates with kindness and gratitude. Her essence is there. Hartman also told about a great master, a Cambodian teacher, Maha Ghosananda. She recalls running into him at the Spirit Rock Meditation Center in California at a point in his life when he was already affected with a memory illness. She said she saw him wandering in confusion, yet as she approached him, he was smiling broadly. And she was overwhelmed by the physical experience of metta radiating out of him. Metta, loving kindness. Seeing this, she was inspired. So the practice is insight practice and metta practice, whether we're sitting, standing, walking, eating, working. Mindfully, we become aware. We drop into this present moment experience, and then you notice your conditioned responses. Your autopilot takes control pretty quickly, and you notice that. And if you can maintain awareness for a few moments, you sense through your felt experience, is this wholesome or unwholesome? Your insight comes into play. And then you can work towards clearing away anger, clearing away irritation, fear, sadness, these unwholesome qualities. And then you cultivate loving kindness, this wholesome quality. The Brahma-viharas, as it were, cultivating these actively. So this is the practice. And we do this so that later on, when the challenging situations come, or by the way, the ones that are here now, this compassionate heart naturally arises. A Tibetan meditation master by the name of Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche advises the following. He says, if you become diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia, prepare as you would for death. Then, in those moments when you lose the reference points of self, clarity will naturally arise. When you lose the reference points of self, clarity will naturally arise. If you become familiar with love, compassion, joy, and equanimity through your practice, the Brahmaviharas, then as you begin to lose control, these natural qualities will shine through. And of course, there's the famous stories out there about gurus who've taken psychotropic drugs and they've maintained their minds in calm and stable states while observing their hallucinations. The key is to observe what's happening, observing your thoughts rather than believing them to be who you are. The guru knew the hallucinations weren't him. He knew that his thoughts were not him either. I'm going to save this part for the end. And if we have time, I'll go over that. It's kind of a to-do list. But just going back to the Kirtan Kriya meditation that we did. The one that I read about wasn't at UCLA. I think they're doing it in different places, or they have. I don't know the age of the study, to be honest, but there's a University of Pennsylvania study that I read about this meditation. And again, it was 12 minutes a day. That's what we did today. The people in the study were already suffering from some sort of memory illness. And they practiced 12 minutes a day for 8 weeks, this Kirtan Kriya. The follow-up testing showed not only improvements in memory, but the brain scans revealed a dramatic increase in blood flow to the area of the brain that's associated with learning and memory, which is the area that's affected with Alzheimer's. The brain scans proved it after 8 weeks. And that's like going for your daily walk. And the doctor who conducted the study said, for the first time we see scientific evidence that meditation enables the brain to actually strengthen itself and battle the processes working to weaken it. That's good stuff. Of course, I thought to myself, you won't find your doctor prescribing this. Don't look for that. Why? Because it's free. Nobody stands to make a profit of it. So, like my husband, he had high cholesterol and the doctor kept nagging him to go on statins instead of adopting a healthier lifestyle. Until the broccoli farmers can afford to get a lobbyist downtown, we won't hear too much about it. So, my husband did get his cholesterol down, by the way. Very proud of him. Olivia, what's her name? Where is her name? I'm missing it here. I love her name, Oxen Handler. She's another teacher. I wonder what her ancestors did. Oxen Handler wrote a beautiful piece on people in her family and her community who were suffering from dementia. She recounted this one story about a family friend who had dementia before the illness. I think he was a lawyer, and he'd been obviously very intelligent, and he'd always been very kind. So one day they arrived to his house for a visit, and he threw open the door and said, "I have no idea who you are, but do come in and make yourselves at home." So we want to train ourselves in this way to respond with an open heart. It's like we have to establish this openness of heart now, here, so that when we need it, it naturally arises for us. So many things, majority of things are out of our control, and where they arise from, we don't really know, just like our thoughts. We don't know where they come from, but we can have some agency over how we respond. And practice and training is a really good way to do that. This last story from Oxen Handler was very touching. Her mother had dementia. And she writes, the word savor is linked to the Latin verb sapere, to know. It's a link I've always loved. And it's comforting now to realize that even as our brains may lose much of their ability to think in an organized fashion, we are still capable of the wisdom of savoring. Indeed, for my family, this has been one of the unexpected blessings of my mother's affliction. No longer able to engage in anxious planning for the future or rumination about the past, there's a serenity about her that we rarely saw before. She loves to enjoy the trees, the birds, the clouds moving across the sky. Though her predicament has plunged my family into a morass of stressful medical, logistical, and financial concerns, the truth is that after visiting her, I often come away feeling refreshed. What a interesting reflection. I have a list of 6 practical tips to protect the mind. And I'll quickly mention the top 5 are very obvious. But the 6th one is nice. I found it to be very hopeful. We know them already. Do your aerobic exercise regularly. Get the blood flowing. Good nutrition, avoiding processed foods, right? Antioxidants, fruits and vegetables, right? Practical things. Stay mentally active. Classes, musical instrument, foreign language, game, puzzle, complicated ones that are hard. Daily meditation. And staying socially engaged, sangha, friends, family, co-workers, neighbors, animals. The last one I found interesting, a practical tip to protect the mind. Stay tuned to new developments in the research. A lot of research is being done in the field, and you may be able soon to take simple tests to gauge your risk and take preventative action, such as taking certain medicines or other things, before the brain has sustained significant damage. The latest findings have shown that the brain is far more flexible than we ever thought. Even late in life and in the wake of serious injury and illness, the brain can forge new neural connections. And this is cause for hope. So let me end there.